Just want to say a quick thank you to all the members of the Kinetic Rugby League channel. It is greatly appreciated. Content on this channel will continue to be free. There is no obligation to pay anything for the content, but those that become members, that donate during live streams, it is all greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for your support, and if you'd like to become a member, you can do by clicking the join button below this video. That's going to be it. Let's get on with the video. Starting with 12th place and still in 12th, I have the Salford Red Devils. Now, I was quite disappointed with them last week. Even under the current circumstances, the score for me just wasn't acceptable, but they at least made it, I guess, slightly more acceptable this time around for what's going on and the fact they're against a top-class Wigan side as well. Now, I'm glad they're also able to get themselves a try at home for the fans. That's always, I suppose, nice in all the crap that's currently going on. Now, I'm not sure if the week off from Super League will be a welcome relief for the players and possibly the whole club, as the focus will be on the Challenge Cup final mostly. But we'll see if they can come back in 2 weeks with some decent prep behind them for their next game, which is at home versus Saints, and hopefully they'll extract some positive moments from that game. But as of right now, Salford Red Devils still in 12th. Moving on to 11th place and staying in 11th, I have Huddersfield Giants. So they actually had quite a bit of pressure on Leigh's try line in the first half, but they didn't look very creative or confident when they did try to move the ball. I think there was a fair few times, though, they kept some decent pressure on Leigh, in Leigh's end of the field, in a handful of moments as well. At the beginning of the second half, I think they weren't really able to keep up with Leigh for a little while, but their efforts towards the back end of the game, I think, were fantastic. Took them a while, but eventually they started to just kind of throw caution to the wind a bit more. They were less afraid of making mistakes, and they almost made that miraculous comeback. But the final thing on Huddersfield is we all know they're still a way off, both offensively and defensively, but I do think there are positive elements in there. With Clune back, they might be able to keep more control in games. Wolford had a spell on the sidelines, but is back now and could help through the middle. Rush is looking quite lively as well in the halves, but players like Lollahea and Flanagan, they do add creativity when a platform is laid for them, and maybe with the break next weekend, they can come back stronger. But as of right now, Huddersfield stay in 11th. On to the next two sides. Moving down one this week, I have Catalans Dragons, which means for the first time since round one, moving up one and away from the bottom three, I have Castleford Tigers. Starting with Catalans Dragons, they are looking like an absolute mess at the moment, and I think with Matt Namara going, the club aren't really bothered about making playoffs at this point, maybe just seeing what Tompkins can get out of this side, and then sort of waiting to see what unfolds in terms of coaching availability. So I don't think they'll make any decision this year. They'll just kind of see what unfolds, who's available. So in attack, they remain dull and uninspiring. And you'll see, like when you watch them, as soon as they face any slight inconvenience, heads go down, all motivation is lost, and they just kind of switch off for the rest of that set, whether that's defensively or offensively. I did predict Hull FC to win 30-0, but I'll be honest, I was doubting myself. The moment that scoreline came out of my mouth in the predictions video, like, am I actually about to say 30-0? Seriously? But the efforts and quality versus Hull just proved how far off they've been and how far off they currently are at the moment. Now, they had a slight uptick in performance a few weeks back, but that was mostly against bottom three teams, with a good effort versus Wakey in there as well. But they need to get back to the basics of Rugby League. Do them well, just kicking long, chasing well, staying well disciplined. Hope that they find a spark from somewhere. Now, their squad on paper suggests that sparks should be flying everywhere every week, but as of right now, they join the bottom three in 10th. But moving on to the mighty Castleford Tigers. I think the game versus Warrington was fairly similar to their game versus Leeds the week before. So, they weren't awful. They weren't absolutely terrible. They did show some fight. And then Leeds and Warrington, they weren't amazing in those games, but they were just outperformed, that's Cass that is, were outperformed by two sides that we know are just better in most, if not all, areas. Now the difference this week being that they at least kept going for the full 80 minutes, and I'll get on to Warrington and how they kind of contributed to it being a closer game, but Cass is still a really easy team to pin back. They don't look that creative in attack, but I do think they can at least move the ball around with a bit of speed. They're not afraid to go early in the set towards the edges sometimes, but it's probably not often enough as they need to with how much they're getting pinned back at the moment. Now, they did lose at the weekend, but still move up, mainly because Catalans have been so poor. And Castleford have at least shown some desire in recent weeks. They're not a great team, but they're not as bad as Catalans right now, in my opinion. So they move up one into 9th. Then in the next group, I have St Helens moving down 1 and Warrington Wolves moving up 1. In the last 2 weeks, it looked like Saints were starting to find a little bit of a groove, with a bit of consistency in their spine at least. But it was a little bit disappointing to see them shut down like that. I thought it'd be a much closer game, but that scoreline is quite disappointing. Now, they did have to deal with a yellow card fairly early on, but weirdly, they actually didn't concede any points in that time. But if you look at the tries that they conceded as well, just a few simple things like getting the ball wrapped up so Hull KR can't get an offload, or they can get the ball down in tight spaces like Petahiku's try, just getting the ball wrapped up. Sometimes players switching off. I think one of the earlier tries that KR scored as well looked like the right edge defence for Saints was just a little bit, unfocused in that moment, didn't quite switch on properly. But either just switching on or getting the ball wrapped up would have helped to at least reduce the score a little bit, but they were way off against Hull KR, so they moved down 1 this week. But with Warrington, it felt like they had control for most of the game versus Castleford, and like I said before when I spoke about Cass, Warrington were just better in most areas. There was stronger carries, quicker ruck speed, better defence, and more dangerous in attack as well. And discipline, though, I think from both teams was actually decent, but it just felt like Warrington was a little bit cleaner. It just affected Castleford more when they gave away a penalty or a 6 again. Now, Warrington did allow Castleford to start gaining a bit of momentum towards the last 15 minutes. That was my biggest pet peeve with the game. Started to gain momentum, work the ball up the field a bit more. It was a little bit easier to gain meters, apply pressure on the try line, get a few more points. I think Warrington should have allowed in that game. I was really impressed with Max Wood, actually, at the weekend as well. I'm really hoping he gets in the team for Wembley. And to be honest, he should be in the squad every single week, in my opinion. At least since round 1, he should have been in the squad every single week, only to be kept out by injury. But Courier was solid, and Joe Philbin, his carries over the last few weeks have been fantastic. And of course, Mark Sneed's kick in was a huge help. But on to the next group, I have Leigh Leopards, Wakefield Trinity, and Hull FC, all non-movers this week. Leigh Leopards were fairly similar to my assessment of Warrington, I'd say. They had most of the control in the game, basically the better side for most of it, but they kind of switched off towards the end. One major difference, though, was discipline. Discipline from Leigh was poor, I think, and just silly mistakes added up a lot in the first half especially, which gave Huddersfield a lot of ball in dangerous field position. But at least they did a solid job defensively to not allow the Giants to just crash over really easily. And I think there's still a bit of a disconnect with Lamb and McNamara, which is completely understandable for now. I really think if Leigh want to be serious contenders, and by the way, I'd say they're a dark horse right now, but to be serious contenders, I think they really need Armstrong, number 1, to be healthy, and 2, for him to kind of live up to the hype, or at least get close to the hype that a lot of us, including myself, put on him before the season started. Leigh are still a really strong attacking and defending side. As of right now, they stay where they are. But next up is Wakefield Trinity in 5th. They took on a Leeds side that looks very different to the one they faced in round 1. It was still a close game on both occasions, but I think this time it highlights and displays the developments and improvements of both sides. But if you look at some of the tries that Wakefield conceded and the moments leading up to them, you'll see slightly lethargic defending. Sometimes their line looked a bit disconnected or slow to get off the line and shift together, which is uncharacteristic of Wakefield this season, but nobody's perfect on a week-to-week basis. Even the teams near the top, they're not always perfect. But in possession, they move the ball around with pace and energy, which has been a constant for that side. They were just beaten by a good and reliable Super League team. So for me, there's no major complaints, but Wakefield stay in 5th. But getting on to Hull FC, they won 34-0 against Catalans at the weekend at Catalans. So that's not a bad trip to the south of France, is it? Now you could see versus Catalans, there was a major difference in energy. Of course, that'll be down to the contrast in seasons that both teams are having, but that's been fairly consistent for Hull FC. Their energy has been good this year, and I think they've got a clear identity as well. It looks like they kind of play the same way every week, or at least try to. Their forwards take the hit-ups and get plenty of offloads to extend the plays and eat up more meters. Caesar is kicking well, and as a unit, their kick chase has been, it's had really clear intent. And then defensively, their intent to get stuck in as well on the back of it, and over time, they're just building up pressure on their opponent's try line. But we saw versus Catalans, and versus most teams this year, when they built up enough pressure, they can crash over with the likes of Herman SASA if they like, or they can use Cuss or Price to stretch the defence, and they can be creative. And defensively, I think they do well to shift across as a unit as well and plug the gaps, and they've been a really tricky defensive side in the last few weeks. But Hull FC, they stay in 4th. But finally, we have the top 3, another group that is unchanged. So we have Leeds Rhinos, Hull Kingston Rovers, and Wigan Warriors. But Leeds Rhinos are on great form right now. They've won 4 in a row, and the only loss in the last 5 is against Hull KR, which they performed really well in. They also had full control in the game against Saints and Castleford. They made a comeback against Hull FC, and now they've competed and beaten a really strong Wakefield side. So it's not just the fact that they're getting wins that's impressing me at the moment, but it's the variety in games, the variety of situations. They've been tested in a few different ways this season, and like I said before, during Wakefield's part, Leeds are a good side and they're a reliable side. Now, we give a lot of praise to Wigan and Hull KR, but Leeds Rhinos are genuine contenders this year, as of right now, at least to me. Now, they're in their own space, I think, right now on this list, as there's still a slight way off the top 2 until they can beat one of them coming up. I know they've beaten Wigan, but I think they'll need to beat one of those 2 again this year to break into the top 2. But the teams below them right now, I think they've got a bit of work to do in order to dislodge Leeds from the top 3. But Leeds Rhinos right now stay in 3rd. Next up is Hull Kingston Rovers. Again, continuing to play extremely well, but there's nothing else they need to be doing right now to take the number 1 spot. It's just Wigan haven't done anything worthy of being moved down. But Hull KR right now, still top of Super League anyway. If I had to guess, I suppose being top of Super League is more important than being second in my power rankings, I guess. To some people anyway. But they just continue to control games. They execute so cleanly when they've got the ball. Defensively, they're rock solid. Mikey Lewis is on top form right now. They were already good before Morg came in. But somehow, I think they're a little bit better. At least to me anyway. And Hull KR fans might agree with that one. Let me know your thoughts on that. But there isn't one single passenger in that side. Everyone is there because they deserve to be there. If I had to find any negatives, just for the sake of it, one would be they had a quiet second half versus Saints, but, big whoop, they still won 8-0 in the second half. And the other negative is they didn't score when they were a man up versus Saints. So yeah, absolutely terrible. Sorted out Hull KR. Finally, in first place, I have Wigan Warriors. Now, they beat Salford very comfortably at the weekend, which of course was to be expected. But if you want to make their win sound slightly impressive, there was no Miskey or Wardle. I know, right? What a shock. How did they manage that? But in all seriousness, it's a positive sign for Wigan. It's a really positive sign for the future of the game as well, that somebody like Eckersley can come in at any time and do the job as well as he does, either at fullback, in centre, or on the wing. Farrimond came in for French as well this week, and every time we see him, he looks more confident and more mature and just a better player all round every time we see him come in for Wigan. And Jacob Douglas, he played on the wing this week and got himself a hat-trick. So well done to him. The only negatives, I think, in recent weeks would have been results versus Wyatt and Lee, were maybe a little bit closer than they would have liked or that we would have expected at this moment in time. So that is going to be it for my Super League Round 13 power rankings. If you guys have your own list, do let me know in the comments section down below. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the Kinetic Rugby League channel to stay up to date with more Kinetic Rugby League content. If you'd like to join the Discord, the invite link is in the description. And if you'd like to become a member, you can do for as little as £1 a month. But thank you to all members. Thank you to all subscribers for helping me hit 8,000 as well. Very, very recently. Thank you for your support. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.